And now, from Glasgow.
So welcome to the first proper build video. This is going to be the Hong Kong models Lancaster 1 to 32 scale Dambusters. I'm going to be doing it side by side with kind of with building with the boys. He's giving me permission to use his videos for reaction purposes. So each video is going to be split into 3. So first of all, I'm going to react to the Hachette build. Then I'm going to build my own stage by stage, and then the last segment right at the end, because some of you might find it a bit boring, we will do the cost comparisons. So let's go over to the reaction. So this will be edited. I won't be showing the whole lot, but this is the first part where he shows the parts off.
Okay, so here are the parts we get with part 1.
Okay, so I'm going to just pause it there. So obviously one thing I want to explain, I've popped his logo in the bottom and I've popped his link on screen. His link will be in the description as well, so that please do go and visit his channel. He is a very good builder, and he's a very similar to builder to me in that he's building to have fun. If it's slightly inaccurate but it looks good and he's had fun, that's absolutely fine. That's one thing that we do share. He's such a laid-back guy on YouTube. It's brilliant. So I can see straight away that the parts that we're going to get with the Hachette version, we're going to get a piece of the nose. You can see that down on the bottom right. We're going to get a bit of framework. We're going to get a propeller that we're going to have to make up. We've got a few little pretty bits, and we've got a test box.
Now we're going to be using this one here to begin with.
So first of all, he's placed the framework on. Now this is the first area that the Hachette build differs, obviously because of the style of build that it is. It's obviously not always going to be the same. So I'm just going to try and flip my camera over. So this is my framework, shall we say. This is my nose. So this is both his front nose and the framework combined. Now the first concern I have, if you look at the size of his framework compared to the size of mine seems a lot more finer. All I've got for size wise obviously is his grids on his cutting mat, and it looks like the actual frame is the same, so I don't know, maybe it is about the same. But obviously that's something I'd like to look at in closer detail if I can in the future.
Is the port nose internal frame. So this is part we've been working on first, and we have some elements.
So I'm going to skip this bit because he's going to be adding some little pretty bits. There they all are there. Now obviously the main advantage that he's got is that his are pre-painted, whereas mine are going to have to be painted. I'm not going to go into the fine details at this video on my build, but it will come eventually. So yeah, let's have a little look at the next bit. Okay, so the next bit, he's got to glue a window into the actual Lancaster. Now this is a bit of a concern for me, as you may well spot yourself.
Very important to get glue on the actual window itself. Super glue from there.
So basically he's super gluing a window into the nose. Now that window is going to go round about there, and as you can see from the surround, it's quite big, and it's going to be stuck in with super glue. I would perhaps be looking at gluing that in with PVA glue. When you use super glue, you always do run the risk of clouding. He may get away with it on this one because it is quite well ventilated. If you were to pop something like a canopy on top and you super glue it, there's nowhere for the fumes to go. So this one he may get away with, but I'm not happy with the lip and the fact that you've got to super glue it.
So this is where our window's going to go. So find how to make it. So that's how that was going to pop in. But what we don't want to do is get any glue onto this actual window here. So
but you know, you can't deny that looks beautiful. You know, that it is absolutely fantastic. Sorry, one thing I was just looking at, he's got, yeah, I've got recessed lines as well. Now his rivet detail is very nice. I can see some people going, oh, they're too big. Mine are a lot more subtle. There we go. So I have quite subtle rivets, whereas his are quite deep. That wouldn't be a concern for me. And obviously it is part of the manufacturing process. You can't get those absolute fine details. This is the balance between die cast and plastic. Die cast is nice and big and chunky and heavy, and everybody loves die cast because they think it's wonderful. But small plastic details, it does pick up the details so much better. And I've always said metal for when you need the strength, plastic for when you need the detail. Obviously they're going to want a bit of strength here. You know, it is a screwdriver build as I call it, so it will be screwed in at some point. So you're going to need a certain amount of strength, and for that you've got to compromise on some of the detail. But that window does look nice, and the way he applies the glue is very good, very careful.
So you can see here, I can show you, I've stayed right to the outer edge. I'm nowhere near the main glass. So I put a couple of beads there and there, and a bead at the bottom corner there. So this will hold. Now I want this to go in clean, so we're not smearing it all over the window itself. So we're going to pop.
Now one thing about Scott is that there's no way I would apply that with my finger. I just know I would get glue everywhere. Scott, despite having larger hands than me, just seems to be more dexterous than me, and as you can see, he's done a fantastic job. There's no way I'd have done that. I'd have had to have used tweezers. But yeah, he's done a good job there when it goes in. Look at that, superb job.
None on the window at all.
How do you do it, Scott?
We have no worries, no panics about that. So we have a nice clear window without any kind of glue mark or gas stain on it. Lovely stuff. So that's our window in. That'll hold nicely. Fantastic.
Very nicely done. So now we'll move on to the next stage, and I think I can do a direct comparison here. Okay, I did actually forget that this bit was next. Now this bit does make me cringe. Nigel's modelling bench has commented on it, and that's gluing the pitot tube in.
Just in here, you want to make sure this goes all nice and straight. Guide it with tweezers, and then just going to straighten up once we're in. There we go. So that's where we're going. Let your glue hold, let your glue take.
Whoops, little bit of glue stick. You've got some glue on your thumb there, Scott. It's not going to be a major problem. But there we go. He stuck that on. Now Nigel's modelling bench on his videos, he's mentioned this. I'm going to sound like I'm saying it because he did. Personally, I think a sticky out bit like that on part 1 of 130 is madness. I wouldn't stick mine on now. I would pop it in my little box and I would keep that, and I'd perhaps be putting that on in issue 130. But I also know that Scott will be looking after his pieces. His probably won't snap off, whereas a lot of people might be complaining about it. Don't forget, I've got 2 cats as well that like to investigate, so you know, mine would be at risk. But it is a nice piece.
There's got a little glue smeared on there. That's how we're going to go for that section. Now we work on the
Right, so the next stage is the propeller, and this is somewhere area where I can make a direct comparison. Let me find it. Right, so now the way that they've put theirs together, because their propeller's going to be moving, let me just fast forward a little bit to there. Right, so their propeller's going to have, you're going to be able to adjust the pitch because you've got that cog system. Now if it's anything like the Spitfire, it's not going to be particularly strong, so you don't want to be adjusting the pitch too much, but obviously the main guts of this is the fact that there'll be a motor, and I've lost my cursor. Here we go. So basically what we're doing, we get this little jig, and I've actually gone too far forward, my apologies. So we get this little jig, and then we get the base of the propeller, we pop the pieces in, and that jig is handy because it gets the propellers in exactly the right position.
Next thing we'll do is lock them in basically with this part here. Now this has pins, so it will sit, and it will sit snug. And it will lock into place.
And then obviously we lock that in, and then he'll actually screw that in, and then he'll put the spinner on top.
Unscrews and it understands.
So
glue in this is push to fit. So again, don't push down on this. We don't want to put pressure onto the centre of it. We just want to.
now that actually looks nice like that, although that's not finished.
When you do a metal screw.
There we go. So that's now going to screw in,
Release the oil. We have ways to go through these.
and then we're popping the spinner in.
And we have one more.
So now obviously the base model for Hong Kong models, it won't come with the motor. I'm saving something for a bit later, but I am looking at motorizing mine. I was looking into using Arduinos or some kind of electronics, but I have actually found something which will do the job for me. I think the price is quite reasonable. I will be bringing that out in a future video. So let's do a quick comparison between his propeller and mine, and you'll actually be quite surprised at how similar they are. So this is the sprues for the propellers, and you see there's three propellers. I've got 4 sprues, so you can make them 4 times. This will then go on to, I'll show you this one because this is the ones that snapped off. So they will go on to there, and then the spinner will go over the top. Now the only concern that I have, and I'm sure that once I start to build it, it will all make sense, but there's a little shaped piece there. If I can just get the focus, there we go. We've got a shaped piece there which suggests to me that I can't get it in the wrong way round, and they've all got the same shape, but there doesn't seem to be an opposite shape on here. So, and I've looked at the instructions, if I can find them. There we go. So do you know what? I think it kind of answers itself. I think the base of the propeller is too large to fit into that hole. I think it's actually going to go in like that. Sorry about the focus, guys. So it's going to go in like that, and you're not actually going to be able to physically fit it in that hole upside down. So with the exception of the cog system, we are pretty much identical on this one. So this is the fun bit now. I will say that the Spitfire motor was very good. But what he's doing, he's now going to pop his motor in.
Nicely into the back of there. So now we have the battery tester. What you tend to find with these is the second you plug this in, it's going to go nuts. Fantastic.
Oops.
Why we?
There we go. So there's his test with the Hachette one, and this is a real big plus.
There we have it. Wow. And that's getting faster. Why we? Really happy with that. Fantastic. Just take off that chair, slow down.
Isn't that fantastic?
Oh, really?
So, now, obviously, I think Scott seemed genuinely surprised at how good that propeller is, and give them their dues. That was a very good propeller. The way that the motor spins it was exactly the same with the Spitfire. I actually expect this one to be better because it looks like it's the same motor as the Spitfire, but the Spitfire was 1:18 scale, so the propeller was a lot bigger. So obviously that motor had to work a lot harder. So this one's probably better. Now there has been some complaints about the direction that the propellers spin. They're saying that it spins the wrong way. If I was building the Hachette version, I wouldn't be concerned. One thing I know, well, first of all, it's a test box. You plug it in, it works. Now, first of all, there's going to be a circuit board. That test board isn't going to be used in the final Spitfire. It's just there just so you can test things. There's going to be a little circuit board. It's going to control the motor. It'll control which direction it goes. Hopefully it'll be correct. And even if it's not correct, it'll just be a DC motor. Now, I don't know a huge amount about electronics, but what I do know is that if you swap the plus and the minus around, the motor now spins in the opposite direction. So if I got that and it spun in the wrong direction, I'd just get my solder iron out, I'd disconnect the wires and I'd reconnect them the other way, and it'll spin the opposite way, and it's really not going to be a problem. Right, so that is my reaction to issue 1. I think it's time to get some building done. Okay, so this is the stage that we're going to be doing in this video. This is stage number 1, and that looks to me like it is a pilot seat. So it may look a bit complicated to people. You'll see 3, 4, 5 pictures of pilot seats. What it is, it's actually a stage by stage. So you'll see the first picture, then the second picture is the first one plus the next bits that you add. Then the third picture is the second stage with an extra bit added to it. And then the fourth picture will be adding the photo etch, and then the last picture will be the completed. So if you're doing this, you've never done anything like this before, don't be put off by the number of pictures. So we have got some very small parts to put together. Now you'll see, for example, just below the number 1, which is the stage number, you'll see P45. That refers to the part number. That is P means which sprue it comes from, so it will come from sprue P, and then the 45 is the part number. So to do that that particular piece, we're after sprue P, piece number 41. So to do that first section of stage 1, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces. We need, all of them are going to come from sprue P. We're going to need parts 41, 45, 40, 44, 56, 38 and 42. Now you'll also see triangles with letters in them. That refers to the paint call out, which I will bring up now. Now this is the entire paint list for the whole build, and you'll see, for example, it says A RAF dark green, and it gives you 3 different manufacturers. So if you're using AK Interactive, you'll use paint number RC281. If you're using Tamir, you'll use paint XF81. If you're using Mr. Hobby, Mr. Colour, you're using C361. Now I'm actually going to be using AK Interactive 3rd generation paints mostly. I may switch at a later date. What I'm aiming to do once I get my new spray booth is all of the brush painting and all the internals I'll tend to do with a brush. But once I get the airbrush out, I tend to try and use Mr. Hobby. I don't want to mix and match the paint brands within the same area, but obviously, you know, I'll do what I can. Now you'll see a slightly confusing one, colour B, RAF Dark Earth. Now if you're using AK Interactive, it's nice and simple. You just use RC287, and if you're using Mr. Hobby, nice and simple, you just use C369. But you'll see is a very long line for Tamiya, and you actually need to use 4 different paints. And what that means is you'll see that you use, it says XF52:4, and what that means is that you're going to use XF52 4 parts, and then XF32 you're going to use 2 parts. If you use XF51 you need 1 part, and XF2 you need 1 part. So if you're doing it by drops, you could put 1 drop of XF52 and 2 drops of XF3, 1 drop of XF51 and 1 drop of XF2. Obviously if you're going to make larger quantities, whatever measurement you use for one, use them all the same. So if you decide to pour the paint out into a measuring container, you might, for example, decide to use 4 milliliters of XF52, and then you'll use 2 milliliters of XF3, 1 milliliter of XF51, and 1 milliliter of XF. And you can change the units as much as you want, but just keep them the same. Now, obviously, if it's in areas that you're going to be painting a lot of, I can't remember the exact colour that they're using for the bottom. I think they're using RAF Dark Earth. So you're going to need a lot of paint. Do you know what? I can't see the. Oh yes, I can. So it will be right. So they won't be using that. It's actually RAF Night that they're using for the outside. So obviously look at the stage that you're on, and then decide how much paint you're going to use, and then decide if you want to use drops of paint from a pipette as a measurement, or if you want to use a beaker and use milliliters or gallons or whatever you want to use. So back to stage 1. So you'll see that we've got, then these will be quite small parts. I'm going to do this in a little bit more detail than normal, and the process that I use is I first of all remove any parts that I'm going to need. Now I'll do this in 4 sections, so I'll probably build up the first stage, and then I'll do the second, then the third and the fourth. And what I do is I cut off all my pieces that I need for that particular stage. I then clean them up. I will show you the cleanup process that I use, but I will only do it on this video because it's quite repetitive and quite boring, to be honest with you. I'll be honest with you. So I'll show you the cleanup process, and then in future videos I'll just say I've cleaned them up as normal, and that means that I've cut them off the sprue and I've taken any irregularities off. Now I then assess whether I want to glue them then paint them, or if I want to paint them then glue them, and I can see that the vast majority of this is colour D, and then we'll be picking out details individually. So I think what I'll do is I will glue all of these together. I will then paint everything in D, and if you look at your chart, D refers to RAF Interior Green, which is RC293, or in my case it's going to be AK11847 RAF Cockpit Grey Green. And then what I'll do is I'll pick the details out. So when we get to the second stage, we need E for the padding. Now E is dark green leather. In my particular case I'm going to use AK11150 gunship green. What else is there? There's D on the headrest, D and G actually. So we've got more, yeah, looking at that, yeah. No, the D will already be painted, so we'll add the G, which is a flat yellow. Now how I'm going to go about that yellow, I'm not sure. I may actually paint a little blob of white, and then I'll paint the yellow over the top. We'll have a look as we get there. We've got more padding, and then when we come to the seat belts, I'll just pick those out separately, and they are coloured F, which is a tan coloured. Now I'll be using a colour called Deck Tan, AK 11114 Deck Tan, and I'll just be painting over that. Obviously I need to prime it first, and the primer that I will be using will be, I'll see how it goes. I've got this new primer, AK Interactive 3rd generation, which I'm quite keen to use, but if I will be doing some practice runs with the primer first, and if I do struggle with it, I'll go back to my old tried and tested, which is, I can never pronounce this, Steinlerez, but it's a Badger one, but I'm keen to use the AK one. It looks a bit cheaper, it looks very good, and obviously wherever possible you have a preference to use the same brand primer as the paints. So let's see how I get on. Okay, so this is my sprue P, although it's actually sprue P, Q and O. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to, how you organise your sprues is purely up to you. This particular piece of the sprue fell off during the transport process. That's absolutely fine, but I want to cut the sprues off anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut sprue O away from the sprue P, and just because I can, I'm just going to neaten these up. So this is sprue O, and there's only one piece on there, but this is what I do next to organise my sprues. I do like to get a piece of masking tape, and somewhere simple, possibly here, I'm just going to pop this piece of sprue on, a piece of masking tape on, and I'm going to label that with a P, with a pen that works preferably. Okay, I have a pen that doesn't work, but basically I'll be writing P on that. Now the reason I do that is my eyesight is not perfect. The label on the P, if I can get it in, there we go, is there. I don't know if it's, can I get the focus? So look, as you can see, I'm really struggling to get that in, whereas that is a lot simpler to find, and that's how I'm going to label all of my sprues. Okay, so there's all my sprues labelled. Managed to get my pen working, so that's got the P on it, so I know which one that is. This is sprue Q, and I've done something slightly different. Because this sprue only has one single part, I just pop the masking tape onto the actual piece, and that'll be fine. Right, so the next step then, you're going to need some cutters or a knife, or however you remove parts from the sprue. I do like these cutters. These are not the best cutters, but they're certainly not the worst. They're fairly expensive, but not as expensive as something like God Hands. So we look at the first part that we need, and I'm going to go for part P41, and it's going to look like the side of a seat, so we'll look for something that looks seat-like, and I can see it's there. Now the way I'm going to cut this off is I'm going to cut this sprue nib quite long. Okay, and I'm going to look at the parts that look very, it's a very delicate piece there, so I want to just cut, that looks very fragile, so there we go. Because this one is on the end of the sprue, I can actually cheat, and I can leave some of the sprue on, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut around, and then I want to cut that delicate piece off first, because once that's cut off, there's not going to be too much stress on it. Let me zoom in on this, guys. So all I'm going to do is all the pieces of sprue that I've left, I'm just going to gradually cut those small, and I'm going to deal with one at a time. And the way these side cutters work, guys, you have a flat side and you have that bit on the inside. So you always want to keep the actual piece on this side, and then you want to just come in as close as you can. Okay, now the better your sprue cutters, the better the cut, but you'll never probably get it absolutely perfect. So what we then want to do is, on the end of that, we want to get our sanding sticks, and I'll go more into detail about sanding sticks in another episode. But basically they all have grits, what's called a grit. This is a 180, and this will take things down rather quickly, and then I'll work my way through various grits. This is 1200, and then this will just smooth off the piece. And this is very hard to do there, but what I always do is I just feel it gently with my finger, and then I can tell if it's been cut properly. And then I work on to the next piece. So there's a sprue nub there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that off like so, and I can feel that there's a bit of a sprue nub. You can also do this with a knife. You can scrape it with a craft knife, but this particular piece, because these particular sprue cuts do cut rather close, I'm actually going to go in with a sanding stick. And basically what's going to happen, these very high grits, they're going to take a lot of plastic off very quickly, but they're going to leave scratch marks. So what you're actually doing is you're using this one to take the plastic down, working your way up through the grits. This is actually my favourite one, the 240. So that will take the plastic down very quickly, and then you finish off with a high grit. And what this is going to do is remove the scratch marks that have been left by the sanding stick. So then we have a little feel of that, and I think that feels silky smooth. So then we go on to the next one. And my advice to you, see there's a sprue nub in there. It's going to be quite difficult to get to. Leave that one till last. Pick on the easy ones first. Sometimes when you do the easy ones, it then makes the more difficult ones easy. Okay, a little bit of a rub. Have a feel. I think that's your best tool. Sorry guys, I keep coming off camera. Let me zoom out a bit. Okay, so I think this is one of the best tools that you don't buy it. It's one of the best tools you own. If it feels nice with your finger, you're probably there. Then have perhaps, oh actually now I felt with my fingernail, I'm now not happy with it. So give that a very, and I'm not pressing hard guys, I'm just literally touching the surface. Oh, that's much better. So then I'll smooth that off with a higher grit, because we don't want scratch marks. Some of these primers and paints, you're going to be painting them very, very thin, and it's going to show up every detail. The whole point of the paint is to not hide any detail. Okay, so there's another nice easy nub, sprue gate I call them. That's a sprue gate, as I call it, and I've deliberately cut this a little bit long. That is what I call a sprue nub. Just a word that I use. Different people use different terms, but if you hear me use the word sprue nub and sprue gate, you know what I mean. A sprue gate is where the plastic is squirted into the moulds. That's not quite as nice as I'd like. And also check any lumps that you've got. Make sure they are supposed to be gone. Is nothing worse. As an example, on the top, it's very hard to see, but right on the top there is a little, like a cap or something. It's a little bit wider than the actual bit that's going up, so you don't want to cut that off. So you know, you could be forgiven for thinking that that's a sprue nub, and you cut it off and suddenly your model's not as accurate as you like. Now this is actually in a little channel, so I'm just going to have to either sand carefully. Now these are sanding sticks that I bought. They're slightly spongy. I bought them to try them out and they are very good, but anyone who watches many of my videos knows that I'm all about cheap. I am a cheapskate. As I always say to people, even if I had all the money in the world, I would still look at cheaper alternatives. So I will be replacing these with my homemade sanding sticks, which are quite literally going to be coffee stirrers stolen from McDonald's and Starbucks and Greg's, and I'm just going to stick little bits of sandpaper to them. Right, there we go. So we've got 2 more to go, and by now, right, I almost cut that off. I'm not sure if that's a sprue nub. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at the instructions and we'll do a comparison, and I can see that these 2 bits there are supposed to be there, but this little bit there, they are definitely sprue nubs. So always double check with your instructions. Yeah, okay, I'm confident that they're sprue nubs. So we'll trim that back. It's quite a big one, you see, which is why I thought it's supposed to be there. Yeah, yeah. So as you can see there, I've cut that slightly long. I didn't get in as close as I wanted, so I'm just give it another clip. Get in as close as you can without damaging the part, obviously, and then we'll just give that a sand. And you know, I'm sorry guys, this is going to take some time, but that's the way it is. We always finish off with a fine grade, so it becomes nice and smooth. And I've got 1 more sprue nub to go, and that's quite a tricky one to cut out. There, oh, that's just fallen off. So this is going to be a tricky one to get to because it's very, very thin, very small area. But I can just get my sanding stick in. This is why I want to make my own custom ones, because I can cut a piece of stick that's even thinner than that. I mean, it is on the bottom of the seat, so the temptation is to just leave it. You could probably get away with that, but it's a case of how precise you want to go. There we go. So I actually own, this is actually a seam line scraper, but I can get in there. There we go. That looks nice. So there we go. That is my first part cleaned up. And another reason I've chosen that one first, it does have that hole a little bit at the top. And then we'll do another comparison with the part in the magazine. Does it look the same as the part in the magazine? I'm so used to doing part works. Does it look like the part on the instructions? Yes, it does. So I can place that down, and then I can move on to the next piece. Oh, sorry guys, I'm off camera again. It's just a shame about having a grey mat, because most of the pieces I use are grey and you won't see them on the map. But I'll look at getting maybe some purple paper. Okay guys, so I'm gonna be cleaning my parts and then I'll show you how we're gonna glue them together. Okay, so I've cut off my first 3 pieces. We've got 2 sides of the seat there, and we've got the back. Now I have deliberately left that nub on the back. The reason being is that I can see that when I place it on, you see that I can hold the nub, and I can still got access to it. So I think what I'm going to do, sorry guys, I think what I'm going to do is I'll glue that back on, and then once it's all dry I'll cut the nub off and sort it out then. So once we've cut our first pieces off, it's extremely important to dry fit. And what dry fitting is just putting the pieces together but with no glue, and that enables us to have a look at the fit. So I can see there's a very tiny line there, which I'm not going to worry about because it's the underside of the seat, but we can see how it fits. So the actual glue line is going to be down the middle of the seat, and then these two posts there. And then when it comes to putting the back on, there's 4 little notches on the back, and there's 4 little notches there. And already I've come across my first problem. The bottom notches fit fine, but the top notches don't quite fit. That gap there is not quite big enough. So what I need to do is either take a little bit of a notch down on there, or we take that bit up, or a combination of the two. Now looking at it, I thought one side did fit. Need to be careful of that. That's actually the support for the backrest. So what I'll do is, using my medium-ish sandpaper, we'll just give that a little rub. It might be like a tiny minute amount of flash. That's good. That's not done it yet, or has it? Do you know, I think that's done it. So we'll put our seat back together, and we'll try and dry fit our back again. Perfect. Do you know what? That's done it. It was just a tiny little rub, and that was perfect. Right, so now that we've dry fitted, we've said to ourselves, does it fit properly? Does it look good? It looks like there's a bit of a gap on this side, and I think that's actually down to that gap there. So I'll just give that a tiny rub with the sandpaper again. And like I say, this can be quite repetitive, but the simple golden rule is, the more time you're going to take on this, the better your result will be. Guarantee it. Obviously it'll be a lot easier to fit this once we've got glue on. It would help if I turned the part the correct way round. And that is a little bit more pleasing to my eye. Yeah, lovely. Right, so how are we going to glue this? So there are many glues on the market. My glue of choice is, I actually use 3 kinds of glue. This is my go-to glue. This is called Tamiya Extra Thin. This is cement in a bottle. It's literally like water, but it does glue. If I have parts where I need a bit more drying time, I use Tamiya cement, and if I have fiddly awkward parts, I use a Tamiya Extra Thin. This is quick setting. Now if I'm able to hold the parts together like this, then I'm going to use extra thin, because I can hold them, I can apply the glue, and no problems. If I'm doing large areas where I have a lot of glue to paint on, for example if I'm painting 2 sides of the wing, well actually this one, the wing comes in pretty much one piece, but when we come to do the fuselage, when we glue that up, is a long big area, so I'll use this one. It's a little bit slower, and I think this is a stronger cement anyway. And then this is simplifying it. If I need to use tweezers and I need to hold the part in place, I don't want to be holding the tweezers for too long, so that's when I'll use my extra thin quick setting. I don't use the quick setting that often because I don't have that many parts, so in this case I'm going to be using the extra thin. Now what I will do for simplicity, guys, I will cost in 1 bottle of this. This should be plenty to do the whole build, but you know, I already own these. I bought these. It's a little bit difficult to cost, because if I costed everything, this would probably cost thousands. But right, so when I come to glue, what I'm looking to do is I want to apply the glue in as inconspicuous area as possible. I don't want the glue to be seen, so I'll try to glue it from the inside. Now this is going to have a seat padding, a seat going over the top, so this bit isn't going to be seen, so this is the perfect place to glue it. Now because this is water, it's going to work on a capillary action, so we don't need to paint that with glue. Let me try and get a zoom in. There we go. So I don't know if you're going to see this, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to touch it, and then that glue is going to run along that line. I'm going to touch it. 3 touches, that's all I've done. I'm going to give that maybe 10 seconds, and voila, that's held. I've kept my fingers away from the glue area. Now I'm going to just turn it upside down. I'm just going to make sure those pins are touching, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just little touch on that pin, a little touch on that pin, and I'm going to hold those together for a short space of time. I'm keeping my fingers away from the glue, otherwise I'll get glue fingerprints all over the seat, and that should be enough. I think that will be a fun. Now, a word about gluing. This is what we've called dry. It's set enough for us to continue working, but if you pull it, and I don't really want to demonstrate because it's an expensive model, I can still pull that apart, and the reason I can still pull that apart is because it's not cured. The difference between drying and curing is that when it's dry, look, that's dry, that's set, but it needs to completely evaporate, it needs to completely dry out, and it needs to set hard. The way this plastic actually works, let me see if I can find a couple of pieces of scrap sprue. I said scrap. So what this glue is going to do, it's going to react with the plastic, and it's actually going to melt the plastic ever so slightly. Okay, so if you now felt that, not now but give it a second, then it will start to feel a little bit kind of liquidy. So where the glue is, it comes into contact, it's kind of melted the top layer, and then it's kind of melded together. And as you can see there, look, it's dried. I can work with that now. I can add the next piece to it. But if I gave it a tuck, it comes apart. Now, don't know how well you'll see this. You should see little strands. You see little strands coming up, and that is melted plastic. So whereas super glue, you have the piece, super glue forms a layer, and then you put the next piece on and it squishes in, and that's pretty much the contact you have with super glue. So as a result of how super glue works, I can't remember the difference between shear and shear strength, and I can't remember the actual word, but if you take super glue and you pull it, it'd be very, very difficult to pull. But if you were to twist it, because it doesn't have that sideways, it's very easy to pull apart. If you ever stick your finger to something with super glue, don't pull it, twist your finger. Don't go out and try it, but if you do accidentally do it, try that first. Now the way that the plastic cement works, because it's melting the plastic, it's kind of like the plastic. Imagine this is hard plastic at a molecular level. I'm getting very sciencey, aren't I? What's going to happen is it's all going to loosen up. Then you've got the other piece of plastic, and then it all kind of mixes, like when you're mixing, when you make your cup of tea, you mix your milk in with the water, so it kind of gets like that, so you can neither pull it that way nor twist it, because you've got all those more points of contact. And in the time I've been speaking, this would have gone much harder, and I'm giving it a gentle push. I would say that will be cured tomorrow. Okay, so but it's perfectly good enough to work with. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do another dry fit. Can never dry fit too many times, and the back of that is going in nicely. I have a very slight concern about the side there, but that's fine. So remember, we're trying to work on the inside as much as we possibly can, but at the same time there's some posts there for us to use. So the bottom goes in very nicely, so I'm just going to pop a tiny dab of glue on that post and a tiny dab on that post, and now the back is stuck. It's not very good, but it's on there. It just kind of gives us a third hand. So then I'm going to just manipulate, keep my fingers away from the glue area. I'm going to kind of push the sides in and the top down, and I'm just going to give that a tiny dab on the third and the fourth posts. Okay, and I just want to push that in slightly. Just give that a bit of time to dry. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lovely. And then what I'll do is on the inside, I'll just give that a very quick couple of drops. And that's the back of the seat in. Looking good. Now, that is still quite soft, so I don't want to cut that nub off yet. The temptation is real because it doesn't look that good because it's got that ugly nub, but don't worry about it, guys. Now, I've just noticed a little bit of clever design. When these sprues come out of the mould, they need to push them out, and you end up having push stud marks. You can see there's 4 push stud marks there, which is a little bit ugly, but we really don't need to worry about that, because I can see on the instructions at the third stage of step 1, we're going to be putting a seat in over that. Right guys, so I am going to carry on with the gluing up. I'm going to be cleaning the small parts. You're probably going to see me using some tweezers as well. Although I've got to be honest with you, I'm so used to working with 1:48 scale aircraft. This is it's obvious, but this is a lot bigger than I thought it would be. I'm looking at these drawings, and I'm looking at those small parts, and I'm going, oh my god, but look, the seat is actually bigger. The instructions are smaller than the actual parts. Okay, so I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so I've cut some more pieces out, and I've laid them out roughly where they're gonna go. I've done all my dry fitting, everything is fine, I've cleaned them. So what we need to do now is glue them up. Now, I think it's going to be easy if we pop this top piece in. What we have here is kind of a headrest. It's got some detail on it, and it's got a little tab, and that tab will slip into there. Now, as you'll see, they look a little bit fiddly, and you'll see I've cheated. I've got tweezers, and I'm just finding it easier to just pick them up by tweezers. Now, this particular piece, I can slide it into there, and I can just bring my finger round the back, and I can just hold that into place. As you can see, it doesn't always work, but it will work most of the time. So it would help if I held it in the right position. So the way I'm going to glue this in, there we go, got that in nice. I'm just going to get a little dab of my glue and pop that in, wait a few seconds, re-hold it with the tweezers if I feel I need to, and then that's kind of held in. And then what we'll do is we'll just go around and we'll make sure we've got it all in properly, that I'm happy, and then I can just pop a little bit of dab of glue just on the sides Now I did say earlier about gluing from the inside. Obviously this I can't, so I'll just get any bits that I like. Now use something pointy. I'm using my fingernail or tweezers. Just give that a little push, say 10 seconds, and that should hold nicely. Look for any seam lines. It's very hard to see seam lines on this, but just make sure you've done the best you can. Okay, and that I'm happy with. Right, so the next piece I'm going to do, because it's the next hardest, I've decided to get the harder bits done first. You've got this piece on the front. Now it looks to me as though the circles are just very slightly off center, and it looks like they want to go lower. Now there are some tabs there. Now we will do a dry fit. That's going to go on there, and I've actually got it the wrong way round because it's not fitting very well. So I'll turn that round. We've actually got triangular tabs on there. I did get this to go in perfect before. That I'm happy with. So little tiny dab of glue just on one side. Give that about 10 seconds because that will still be workable. Position that exactly how I want it. If I'm not happy with the fit, that's why it didn't fit before. Why is that now a terrible fit? Did fit lovely before. It is upside down. Sorry guys. That's why it didn't fit before. Right, okay. Okay, so little tiny dab of glue. Am I still on camera, guys? I do apologise if I'm not. So just a little dab of glue on one side. Give that a few seconds to set. And then I can put a little tiny dab of glue on the other side. Lovely. And we can get the inside on this, but we don't need to because the capillary action, don't know how well you can see that, it's run all the way along there. So that's absolutely perfect. So that's in. Now, the only thing left on this first part is we've got these little supports. Now, we've got lumps on both sides. I can't see because I've not got my glasses on. I need to take my glasses off to assemble things. And then I need to put my glasses back on to see the monitor. So we've got some tabs on the bottom. And they actually stick out more on one side. The part that sticks out not as much, they need to attach to the seat. And you've got these little lumps at the bottom. Now what I've done a little bit of a cheat. In stage 9, we're going to have this piece. This is what stage? This is P6, and this is part of the cockpit. Once we get to stage 9, this and other pieces that we've done is going to go into there, and that's where the pilot seat will go. The reason I've taken this out is that I can see that once this is in, it's going to be going into these holes in the cockpit floor. So once I've glued these onto the seat, I'm actually going to pop it into the cockpit, not glue it in, but I'm just going to pop it in those holes. I'm going to let it dry, and then once it's all set, we know it will fit in those holes in the future. Okay, so make sure I've got these the right way round. The larger triangle wants to go behind, towards the rear, and there's 2 holes on there, and this looks very fiddly, guys, but actually it's not as bad as you think. Right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold it on the first hole there, position this in place, and I'm going to put 1 tiny drop of glue. Give that a few seconds. Lovely. And then I'm going to put 1 tiny drop of glue on the other one. Just like that. It's that simple, guys. Now it's going to be a little bit harder on this one because I don't want to knock the one I've already done, and that's upside down. And I can tell it's upside down because of the little pegs on the bottom. So I'm going to place that into, it doesn't matter which hole you hold and which one you glue first. See, look, it's not, I didn't leave that to set long enough. As you probably notice, I too have shaky hands. Which is why I use tweezers. So take it very steady. I was considering using my reverse tweezers for this, but I think in the long run these might be better. Do you know what? I'm going to try another tactic. I'm going to pop a tiny dab of glue in there. I'm going to try and bring the part to the model. That's done the job. That has done the job. So with me holding that tiny dab of glue, let's see if that's held. Yep, I think it has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very gently, oops, not gluing it, but I'm going to very gently place it into the cockpit. Oh, my legs are falling off again. It's okay, we'll keep trying. I might just apply a little bit more glue to that because it looks like it's starting to dry off. So I am making this look a lot harder than it actually is. I'm not normally this bad, guys. You know what it's like. I think it's the camera thing. I could do this 100 times off camera and I'll get it right every time. The second I go on camera, it'll muck up as much as it can. There we go. I think that's in place. So if you reapply glue, it will actually temporarily make the joint, it'll kind of melt the plastic again, which means it's going to be a bit weaker. So just be wary of that. Right, so I am going to place that into there, and it will just fall into the holes. It is, do you know what, that is perfect. So see if I can show you from the bottom. No, because the holes don't go all the way through. These holes are actually superb. They're in there, they just fall in those holes. So I'm just giving it a look, and because I want to leave that, I'm going to leave this for the, well, yeah, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to call this the end of stage step 1, and then what we'll do in the next video, we'll finish off step 1. We have plenty of time to build this. We have 130 weeks. The last building stage on this is roughly 67. No, sorry, 69. 70, 71. There are some stages that say A, B and C. We've obviously got to paint it and prime it and everything as well, and varnish it and decals and any weathering, but this is not a model that we need to rush. It's very expensive. I want to get my money's worth out of it, so I've decided I'm going to leave that at least overnight, and I'll continue that in a week's time. In fact, you know what, these pegs have gone in so well, I'm actually struggling to pull it out. It will come out. I probably shouldn't have just pulled that out, but yeah, so I've got, like I say, this flooring that is actually doesn't come in until stage 9, but because I saw these pegs on the bottom of the seat, I wanted to pull it out so that I could pop it in there. I don't know if you can see that better. So I've put that in the cockpit floor so that when we come to glue it in, we'll have every confidence that it will fit. So guys, there is technically 1/3, 1/4 of the seat done, but actually I think it's about half done. Okay, so this is the third part of my video. This is where I keep an eye on the costs, and as you can see, we've already got the first 2 issues in, well, the first 2 videos in. So obviously issue -1 is when I bought the model for 335. That makes a difference of -335. Last week I bought 15 paints, primer, and I paid for some postage. So that's an extra £52. That brings us to £3.87. Now, issue, let me bear with me. So we are now on issue 1. Okay, and so what I've done is, you see there it comes up as fuselage propeller. This is just me making a note for what we've done. Now, the issue costs £1.99. Now, I have decided while building this that I am going to put in the cost of 1 bottle of Tamiya Extra Thin. It's a little bit difficult, that, you know, this probably isn't your first, if you buy this model and build it yourself, it's probably not your first model. So you've probably got various glues anyway. But at the same time it does use up some of your glue, so I'm kind of doing a simplified cost, and I've looked on Scale Model Shop, which is my preferred shop, and I've decided it's £4.75. I haven't added any postage costs because, you know, we could have ordered that with the paint and absorbed that postage cost. So I'm going to call this £4.75. So the total cost is £4.75. The running total for Hachette so far is £1.99. The running cost for this model has actually gone up, so £3.92, and the difference so far has gone up to £390. Now, this is starting to reflect one of the advantages and disadvantages of a part work versus a model. With the model, we've had to go out and we've had to buy everything before we can begin. I mean, I've not even costed in paintbrushes. I don't really know how I'm going to do that, but some people use expensive brushes, some people don't. But likewise, as you can see from Scott's build, he's needed to buy super glue, and I haven't costed super glue into the build cost because it's one of those things that people have probably got laying around. So I am keeping the cost quite simple, but as you can see, the Hachette, you're paying a small amount every week. Now, the hypothesis still stands that I think I'll be maybe £800, £750, £800 in the black. So I try to remember the difference between black and red, which one was which. So a lot of these costs that we're throwing at this, they're all one-time costs, whereas Hachette is a small cost every week. So obviously the costs are still going to mount for the Hong Kong, but as I say, as time goes on, I think we'll start to see a difference. Obviously we're going to go all the way down to issue 130. Now you will notice, like I said, what I've done here is I have filled in my projections for the future weeks, but I've just blanked them out for now. I've kind of cheated. What I've done is I've blanked them out by using a white font because I don't think they're relevant yet. So you know, I could show you the future weeks and you can see what my projections are, but obviously if I go out and buy something, or you need something in the Lancaster build, you know, it's going to change all those figures. So that is my very first stage complete. I'm happy. It's a bit bigger than I thought it was going to be, but like I said, as a kid I did 1:72 scale, which means you need to stack 72 Lancasters side by side to become the same width as a Lancaster. More recently, as I've grown up, I'm used to 48 scale, which obviously means you only need 48 Lancasters to get the same width. But this is 1:32, and I've never really done 1:32 scale before. I've often said that my hypothesis is that the larger the scale, the easier the parts will be because they're bigger. But that's not strictly true, because by having something bigger, it now means that tiny switch that was too small to worry about with 1:72, they can now include it. So whereas you might have been dealing with a joystick this big in 1:72 scale, now you're dealing with a switch that's this big in 1:32 scale. So some elements can be harder, but with simple little tools like tweezers, some good sprue cutters, and I'll say good sandpaper, but sandpaper I think is sandpaper, and most importantly, time and patience. Yes, I've not built an awful lot. There is no time limit on this. I am setting myself a target of 130 weeks because that is the length of time that the Hachette will take. But to be honest with you, if I take 1,130 weeks, what's that in years? That's quite a lot of years, isn't it? But 1,130 weeks, that's fine, do it. So yeah, so that's my build. So what we'll do next week, we will finish off the seats. I don't know if we'll get round to painting them. Now I do apologize, I don't apologize for my simplified terms. This is the whole idea of this, is that a lot of you watching this might be experienced builders, and I'm probably boring you by explaining all the simple terms. But please don't forget that some people watching may have never touched a model before. There might be some people out here that decide to tackle this as their very first ever go. So when I first come across a technique, I will be explaining. So obviously in this video I've explained how to do cleanup. I won't be explaining it anymore. I will just say, right, we clean up the pieces as normal, assuming you've watched issue 1. And the same with the gluing, the tweezers, you know, the tools. From now on I'll just say I'll get my tweezers, I'll get my side cutters, I'll get the sand, I'll clean that, I'll glue that, and obviously I'll keep it a lot, it'll be a bit more simplified. So right guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I have enjoyed making it, as I always do. Already this seat is becoming nice and solid, but I'm going to leave it. Well, obviously the next video is coming out next week. I need to film that before it comes out, but yeah, it's all looking good. So next week we will finish off stage 1, at least build it. It's been a little bit slower than I wanted it to, but that's because I'm obviously having to take the time to explain things. So guys, have a wonderful week, and I will catch you in the next video. Take care guys, bye bye.